to use Python as a programming language, then first of all we need to download Python. I'm using a Windows machine, so I go to the website python.org, go to downloads and download Python. The current version is 3.8.3. You can see the exe files downloaded if we just open that. We now have the option to install Python. One of the important things to do when you install Python is check this little box here which add Python 3.8 to the path. This is particularly important later on when we gives us a bit more freedom in creating the directories, our development directories, folders, whatever you want to call them. So please make sure you click that if you're installing this at home. Then you can just install now. Okay, the installation is virtually complete. We actually set up as successful. There is this question here, changes your machine configuration to allow programs including Python to bypass the 260 character max path limitation. Okay, and then it's all complete. If you want to check the online documentation or the tutorials, you can do so at this point, but you can go back to them at any point because you've still got access to all the documentation up here. So I can close that now, and I know I've got Python installed. As I've said, this Python website is quite useful. So we've seen the downloads, we've used that. Documentation, there's lots of different documentation that you can go through. The PEP index is quite useful. There is a style that should be followed with Python, and I will try to do that as I go through the different tutorials that I'll record. So we can move on now and look at using Python itself. Okay, when we start Python, we get the Python shell come up. So this is the Python IDE that's provided when we download Python itself. The Python shell enables us to type in commands. So if we wanted to print out, for example, we can type print hello world, which is the normal starting point for any programming language. Notice the help feature that we get. So as soon as we start to type in a function, in this case, it gives us an idea of what we need to be putting in, although it's not that user friendly. So if we type that in, hit return, and it will run that command. Now clearly running individual commands isn't a lot of help, so what we can do is we can say file, new file, and now we actually get the ability to type in some code. So if you wanted to, again, say hello, and we perhaps wanted to print something else out, use my name, then we can type the commands in there. Notice this time when we're hitting return, we're not getting any output. If we want to get output, we need to run the file, or run the module as they call it, and that will give us a prompt to say we need to save the file. We'll say OK, and the default place to save it will be in the Python directory. Now I'd be slightly tempted to create another folder logs, and then we'll call it hello.py. It's important to have the py extension because that identifies it as a Python file. So we'll just save that. We'll talk about that a bit more later. So now you can see, I'll just extend this out a little bit so it doesn't look quite so strange. It tells me where that's been stored, and then it's output my file for me. So I've got that saved and it's run over here. What happens if I make a mistake? If I go back to my file, I've taken out one of the quotes. Now if I try to run it, it knows I've changed it, so it asks to save it. I'll say OK, and I get a syntax error come up. So it tries to tell me what it is. It's got end of line while scanning string literal. If you're new to programming, that might be a bit confusing, but basically it's saying I'm going through a string which is something between two quotes, and when I'm going through this string I've reached the end of the line, and I would have expected the string to have ended at that point. I've got this big red mark here, so that points to which line they're talking about. So I can say OK and go back up here, and obviously I can find out that I hadn't terminated the string, so I can put that on. And then if I run that again, it says, oh, you've changed it again, you need to save it, click OK, and then I've got my file back again. So there is some error checking, syntax checking I should say, and they will try and help you, although the error messages aren't that clear. Okay, we're going to carry on. Just look at a single print statement. So print, and then PI, and any mathematicians will know PI is 22 divided by 7. Now if we run this, invalid syntax. So what have I done wrong? We can output two things in a print statement, but we do need to separate them by commas. Now let's try again. And the result we get is pi space 3.142 and all those other numbers. So that just shows you that we can actually print out a number as well as a string, and we can also print out multiple things in a Python print statement. So we'll just move on to the next thing. Now we're going to create a new file, so we'll just go file and we'll have a new file. Brings up a new window. We'll close that window, put that one there. So now we're going to go through, we're going to put a number of print statements in, so we're going to put print, and we'll have addition, then the addition is going to be quite simple, so we're going to output what the addition is. We're going to have 2 plus 4, and then we're going to output that. So we can see we've printed out addition, and we've printed out the fact that we're going to add 2 and 4, and then we've actually done that addition. Then we can do the same with subtraction. Check the spelling, there's no spell check included. I'll have something slightly different. Okay, so we'll start off with those two. We'll run that module. Must be saved. Okay, I'll call it calculations or calcs. Remember the .py, that's important. And there we can see that we've actually got 2 plus 4 is 6 and 5 minus 2 is 3. I suppose we could tidy this up a little bit, so we could make that, put an equal sign in our code over there, and now if we run that again, we'll see we've got slightly better looking output. Okay, so we can put multiplication in. Put the equal sign. Okay, and finally we'll do division. Missed a line out. Okay, so we've got quite a bit put in there. We'll run that one. See what we get now. Notice that we've got them all nicely spaced out. Here we've got a bit of an issue because we don't really want all these threes. Okay. So we can look at how we could correct that. We'll do that in a minute. The other thing is everything's printing out on a separate line. So we need to look at how we can correct that as well. One of the things with Python, unlike other languages, is the print statement, when it's printed out whatever it wants to print, automatically prints out a new line character. But we can change that by adding what we want the end to be. I'll put that in and run that. So we just need to change that. I think I've got that right now. So I've now put the comma in, which is what I was missing. What I do need though is a space in there. So now, as you can see on the output, I've got addition, and then I've said I don't want anything to end this line, so it just goes across there. On the next line I do want a new line, but what I can now do is take that bit of code and I can put that in to these others, and now if I run that, you can see that on the output I've got addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. I still need to put my spaces in. Let me just run that again, and it looks a little bit better. I just need to correct this bit here, so that's a little bit more difficult to correct. There's a couple of ways I can do it. Okay, so if we look at this print statement here, we've got one way of doing it is to say we want to format the print statement. Then we need to make some changes, so that will go. We will put the string there. Now what we're saying is we want a formatted string. So we'll use curly brackets to put that in. And if we just run that for the time being, you see it's not made much difference. We've got a comma there which we don't need, so get rid of that little comma. But what I can do is that calculation, I can actually say I want 2 decimal places, and if I run that, you can see I've just got 2 decimal places. If I put make that 4 decimal places, so I've got 4 places there where I'm outputting the result. So we can choose, and typically we probably only want about a couple of places. So that's how we actually format a print string. So it's a slightly different syntax. So we can either output information like we did with the multiplication, where we don't need the formatting, we just want the number to be output. We can see quite clearly how that's happening. But if we need to apply some formatting, we need to say we want a formatted string, what do we want to output, and then how do we want it output. Now if we wanted to, these 2 lines we could put on a single line, so we could have had division in there, so we don't need that line at all now, and we can run that, and we see we're getting exactly the same result. So that's just a number of different things we can do with the print statement. We've also seen some of the basic arithmetic that we can use. There's one other piece of arithmetic which we should look at, which is the modulus. So if I do print, in fact, let's copy the whole of that line there. And instead of having the divide, we'll have the percent sign, which is the modulus. So let's get this. So this is going to give us the remainder of 13 divided by 3. We'll run that. Okay, so we've got a problem there, and the problem is because I've tried to format it to precision, which I can't use for an integer. So the modulus is going to return an integer value, and I've tried to display it with decimal points, which I can't do, so I need to just remove that little bit out of there, and we'll run again. So here we've seen a different sort of error. So this is a runtime error as opposed to an out and out syntax error. So two little different things there. So when the code is being checked first of all before it's run, it will pick up syntax errors. However, if we've got logical errors, then they will come out when the program actually runs. So you can see it had done most of the program, and then when it got to the line where it gave an error, it's told us where the error was, so we can trace it back. We've also got a message to give us an idea of what it is. So we've corrected that now, and if we run that, we should find, there you go, that it works, and the remainder of 13 divided by 3 is in fact 1. I think that's enough for this session, so we'll pick up again next time, we'll look at some more calculations, perhaps with inputs, so the user can actually input values, and then we'll do some calculations.